The first snow of the season came down like quiet forgiveness over Maple Bridge, turning the cracked sidewalks into soft edges and the church's tin roof into a line of white. The town lights blinked early, the way they do when the sky decides to fold into night a little sooner than usual. Inside a narrow rental on Elm Street, Officer Jack Rowan stood by his window in sweatpants and a faded department hoodie, watching the breath of winter cloud the panes. A black brace hugged his left knee, the kind that makes every step a conversation. He'd been home for 6 weeks, doctor's orders, since the accident that could have gone worse and didn't, except that sometimes he woke up feeling like the accident had stayed. The department had sent a card signed by everyone. The chief called every Friday. The guys texted him links to bad jokes. Jack's world narrowed to a kettle, a couch, and the habits of a man trying to heal in a house that didn't know his name. He turned off the lamp and let the room stay dark. Snow made its own light. Outside, a plow grumbled down the hill. The radiator clicked like it was trying to remember a rhythm from another life. And then, from somewhere past the hedges and the telephone pole with the missing cat flyer, he heard it, a long, clean howl, the kind that sounds like distance and return at the same time. Jack paused, not moving as if motion might scare the sound away. He'd heard plenty of dogs in this town, farm mutts, porch guardians, the 2 yappers on 2nd Street that hated delivery trucks. But this wasn't that sound. This was steady. Intent. Close. He pulled on his boots, shrugged into his coat, and opened the door onto the cold. The air hit his lungs like peppermint. Snow sifted under the streetlight. He was halfway down the steps when the shape appeared at the edge of the yard. A large shepherd mix, winter thin, fur salted with snow, amber eyes holding him in a line like a question and an answer. "Hey buddy," Jack said softly. "You lost." The dog didn't back away. He stepped forward without flinching, with the kind of trust that doesn't so much hope as choose. A battered collar hung loose around his neck, and tied into the leather was a red bandana, frayed and frozen at the edges. Jack crouched, his bad knee complaining, and the dog closed the space between them with a calm that felt like recognition. "That bandana," Jack murmured, fingers brushing the knot. The fabric was familiar. Not because of color or pattern. Because of memory. He turned the worn brass tag with his thumb. The letters were scratched but clear. Riggs. And beneath it, a number. And beneath that, a name that made a decade of regret and mercy wake up in Jack's chest. Miguel Alvarez. Jack felt the world tilt and settle. Months ago, he'd stood in a courtroom and looked at that same name in a different font. He had faced Miguel, a man with shaky hands and a quiet voice who'd been charged with a DUI that spiraled into a fender crash on a rainy night. The same night Jack tore his knee diving to keep a teenager from stepping into the oncoming lane. The kid survived. Miguel's fender caught a guardrail. No one died. The town wanted the simple story: lock him up, throw the key. Jack had done something else. He'd taken the stand and asked the judge for mercy. "He made a terrible call," Jack had said into a room that didn't want to hear it. "But I see a man who's trying to make a better one now. Rehab. Community service. Let him fix something. Don't break him. Mercy isn't a math equation. It's a rope you throw across water because you believe in both shores." The judge listened. Miguel got treatment and community hours. Half the town muttered in the diner that the law had gone soft. The other half stirred their coffee like forgiveness might dissolve if you weren't gentle. Now here was Riggs, Miguel's dog, the one people said followed him everywhere, the one Jack had seen sitting in the truck cab outside the clinic, howling not with anger but with absence. "What are you doing here, pal?" Jack whispered. The dog leaned in closer, pressing his head against Jack's coat. He was cold. "Where's Miguel?" Riggs stepped back, looked up the road, then back at Jack. He made a sound that was not quite a bark. He wanted Jack to follow. Jack hesitated. The knee. The eyes. The way pain steals your shirty. Then he remembered a simple thing. Someone had once followed him into a bad night and pulled him toward morning. He straightened, adjusted the brace and said, "All right. Show me." They moved down Elm, past the mailbox Jack had hit with his snow shovel last winter, past the hardware store with the wisecrack owner who pretended he didn't care about anyone. The snow spoke in small crunches. Riggs trotted ahead and then circled back when Jack lagged, a metronome of urgency and patience. They turned left by the old grain elevator, crossed behind the Methodist church, and cut through the lot of the Riverside Thrift where a neon sign blinked OP instead of open because the N was tired. The river, when they reached it, was a gray ribbon talking softly to itself. The old iron bridge arced over, groaning like a granddad getting out of a chair. Riggs climbed the embankment with easy steps and then stopped, suddenly still. A shape in the snow resolved into a pickup parked at an odd angle, passenger door ajar. Headlights off. Frost on the hood. And near the bent guardrail, a dark scuff, a drag of footprints and something that looked too much like blood. "Hello?" Jack called, voice carrying into the trees. "Anyone here? Miguel?" Snowflakes drifted. The river answered with hush. Then quiet and small from down the bank, a cough. "Hold on," Jack shouted, heart punching hard enough to warm him. He moved to the edge, planted his good foot and peered down the slope. There, caught in the tangle of scrub willow where the bank dipped, Miguel Alvarez lay half-curled, one arm clutched to his ribs. He was conscious, the kind of conscious that costs effort, face pale in the moonlight, lips nearly blue. "Jack." Miguel's voice was a rasp shaped like surprise. "He found you." "Yeah," Jack said, already scanning for the safest path down. "Don't move. I'm coming." Riggs was already there, having slid in a controlled scramble to Miguel's side. He stood braced against the man's shoulder like a living anchor. Jack tested the snow with each step, grabbed at branches and eased himself down until his boots found rock. When he knelt beside Miguel, the pain in his knee lit up like a flare, but pain is a mouth. You can let it speak or you can tell it to shush. Jack took a breath and let it be background. "What happened?" Miguel tried to shift and hissed. "Kid on the river path. I saw him from the bridge, hoodie, no hat. He slipped. Went over the side. I stopped. I got him. He ran when I pulled him up, scared. I lost my footing after." He swallowed, breath catching. Didn't want to call 911. Didn't want people saying, "You know what they say." Jack looked at the angle of Miguel's right arm. Not good. Possible rib fracture. Possible sprain. No head bleed he could see. "You should have called me anyway," Jack said. "Or anyone." He squeezed Miguel's shoulder. "You saved that kid. That matters more than what they say." Miguel's eyes flicked up to Jack, hopeful and ashamed in the same glance. "You still believe that?" "I wouldn't be here if I didn't." Miguel exhaled brokenly. Riggs leaned in closer, his breath turning to steam in the cold. Jack shrugged off his coat and pressed it around Miguel's torso to help stabilize the arm. With his free hand, he fished out his phone and hit the emergency shortcut. "Rowan," he said when the dispatcher answered. "Elm to the South River Bridge. One adult male, possible fractured ribs or arm, mild hypothermia. Conscious. Bring a sled and blankets." He listened, nodded, and ended the call. "They're coming." Miguel closed his eyes, relief and almost visible warmth. "I was trying to get to you," he said after a moment, each word measured. "Had something to give you. I tied it to Riggs when I couldn't climb back up. You saw." Jack glanced at the bandana. Tucked into its knot, under a layer of ice crystals, was a small sealed envelope. Carefully he worked it free. "Officer Rowan" was written on the front in an uneven, earnest hand. He slipped it into his hoodie pocket without opening it. "Not here. Not while sirens might be on their way." "I'll read it later," he said. "Save your breath." They waited to the sound of the river and the far-off rumble that might have been an engine or a memory of thunder. Riggs kept his body pressed to Miguel's side. Jack watched Miguel's face for signs of slip. He kept talking the way first responders do to hang a net between a person and their fear. "Back at the hearing," Miguel said suddenly, teeth chattering, "when you spoke, why did you? After what I did." Jack didn't pretend to misunderstand. "You made a choice that could have ended worse. You owned it. I've seen men lie more convincingly to themselves than to a judge. You didn't lie." He looked at the way the snow caught in Riggs's whiskers like salt. "Besides," he added softly, "someone forgave me once when I was a kid acting like a fuse. You repeat what saves you." Miguel closed his eyes like the words warmed him from the inside. Up on the road, a flash of red and blue painted the snow. The rescue sled came skidding down the slope with two EMTs who moved with a practiced kindness, all reassurance and tight buckles and blankets pulled snug. Riggs and Jack backed off just enough, but not enough to feel like they'd stepped away from the job. "Good boy," one EMT murmured to the dog as they lifted Miguel onto the sled. "You did good." Riggs's tail thumped once, his version of a smile. They hauled Miguel up the bank inch by careful inch, and loaded him into the back of the ambulance. Riggs tried to climb in after him. Jack caught the collar gently. "Hey, I'll bring you, okay? Follow me." He whistled softly and opened his truck door. Riggs jumped into the cab like this had been the plan all along. At the Maple Bridge Clinic, light pooled in the parking lot like spilled milk. Inside, the night staff moved fast but not frantic. They set Miguel's arm, wrapped his ribs, tucked warmed blankets under his shoulders. Someone found a bowl and a towel for Riggs. In the waiting room, Amid a Christmas cactus that refused to bloom in December, Jack finally took out the envelope and slit it open with his thumbnail. Inside was a short letter and something that winked in the dim. A small brass badge pin, his missing unit pin, the one he'd lost the night of the accident when he dove and the world Jared, and the day became a line in 2 colors. He'd looked for it for a week. He'd told himself it was only a thing. He'd also told himself a lot of things that weren't completely true. The letter read, "Officer Rowan. You didn't know, but the night it rained and you saved that kid, you dropped this near the guardrail. I found it the next morning when I went back to see the damage I'd done. I kept it because I meant to return it and because I wanted to remember the man who didn't let my worst night decide my life forever. I've been sober 132 days today. I started fixing porches on the south end and patching Mrs. Hargreaves' fence, the one that leans like it needs a story. I leave the receipts in cash because I don't want my name to get in the way of the work. Riggs knows the way to you. He always did. If I can't climb out of the bank tonight, I figure you'll follow him the way you followed your job into the rain for that kid. Thank you for throwing the rope. I'm holding it. Miguel." Jack's throat tightened in a way that had nothing to do with winter air. He closed his hand around the pin and felt the small, stubborn weight of it. On the wall, a clock ticked a soft, reassuring beat. A nurse poked her head into the waiting room. "He's asking for you," she said. In the exam room, Miguel looked like a man stitched back to himself but still a little surprised to find the seams holding. He gave a sheepish half-smile. "I owe you new boots," he said. "That riverbank eats sols." Jack held up the pin. "You already paid." Miguel's eyes brightened. "You found it. Because you kept it safe." Jack pinned the brass back where it belonged on his hoodie, just to feel the gesture. "Listen," he added, shifting his weight, the brace clicking. "I heard what you've been doing. Porches. Fences. The stuff that doesn't get headlines." Miguel shrugged with his good shoulder. "It keeps my hands busy. It says sorry, without making anyone carry the word." Jack nodded. "Forgiveness likes verbs. That's something no one tells you until you need it." "There was a kid by the river," he said. "We should try to find him tomorrow. Make sure he's okay." "I know who," Miguel replied softly. "Evan Harper. What do you know hat? His mom works the late shift at the grocery. I've been shoveling their steps. I'll talk to him. He'll listen." "To you," Jack finished. And he meant it. Sometimes the rope has to be thrown by the one who almost drowned. They settled the details the way small-town plans are always made, gently, with pauses, like a prayer you learn by heart. The nurse came back with instructions. Paperwork was signed. Riggs, exhausted from duty, fell asleep with his head on Jack's boot. By morning, the snow had turned to a pearly crust that sang under tires. Jack picked up Miguel after discharge and together, with Riggs in the back seat finally snoring, they drove to the Harper place on Birch Lane. Evan answered the door in his hoodie, eyes red, shoulders up around his ears like he'd learned to live braced for a hit. Miguel spoke first, voice steady and kind. "You scared last night?" Evan's chin wobbled before he yanked it still. "Didn't think anyone saw." "I did," Miguel said. "I fell after. It happens. Falling. The trick is calling it by its name before it becomes who you are." Jack stayed quiet, letting the conversation be a rope between those two shores. In the end, Evan nodded, once hard, and then leaned down to pet Riggs with the cautious hunger of a boy who needed to touch a good thing to remember that he could. In the weeks that followed, a few things changed in Maple Bridge and a few things didn't. The diner still served pie that tasted like yesterday might have been better than you remembered. The church still lost power every third storm. The thrift sign kept blinking OPE and nobody fixed it because somehow it fit. Jack returned to light duty, then full. The brace came off. He limped a little when it snowed. He stopped apologizing for it. Miguel finished rehab and kept going to the Tuesday night group in the church basement where coffee tastes like penance and talking feels like oxygen. He never missed a meeting. He started a small handyman gig, cash only, word of mouth. He didn't advertise. He didn't have to. People notice the hand that shows up with a hammer when the wind takes a shingle. Riggs learned to ride in the truck without trying to eat the mail. He also learned the route to Jack's house and used it shamelessly whenever he decided it was time for a walk that had nothing to do with leashes and everything to do with company. On a Saturday in March, the town held a pancake breakfast in the school gym to raise money for new practice pads for the basketball team. Jack worked the coffee urn. Miguel manned the griddle. Riggs lay upside down under the table like a dog who'd finally learned what safety feels like. Evan Harper stacked chairs afterward without being asked. He kept a hat on when it snowed. When the plates were washed and the last table folded and the gym echoed that pleasant emptiness of a room that did what it was supposed to do, Jack and Miguel walked out into a late afternoon soaked in warm light. Snow on the church roof went soft at the edges. Somewhere, a car radio leaked a country song about home that wasn't corny when you listened right. "I never thanked you properly," Miguel said, eyes on the sun-baked street. "For the courtroom. For last night. For seeing me." Jack shook his head. "You thanked me the best way there is," he said. "You became the kind of man who throws the rope to someone else." Miguel looked like a person who wanted to say amen but didn't know how. Riggs, as if cued by the softness between them, sat up and gave a single, contented howl, not the long one from the night snow started, not a call for help, but a small, round note that sounded like a rival. People on the sidewalk turned and smiled without needing to know why. By spring the town had a new rumor. Folks said that if you stood on the iron bridge at dusk and listened carefully to the water, you could hear two voices under the rush. One that said forgive and one that said go on. People with more facts than faith said it was wind. People with more scars than facts said it was truth. Jack kept the brass pin on his uniform where it belonged. On days when the shift ran long and the scanner filled with other people's hard minutes, he'd touch it, not like a charm, not like a superstition, but like a promise you feel with your fingers to remind your mouth how to keep it. Riggs split his time between two houses that smelled different but shared a front door no one could see. Sometimes he would come by Jack's place at night and sit by the porch steps, just breathing, just being a dog with nothing to fix and no message to carry. Jack would join him with a mug of something warm. They'd watch the town exhale. Evenings in Maple Bridge have a particular courage. You have to believe that morning will come. It always did. On the first morning of summer, Jack took a slow run down Elm, past the hardware store, past the church, to the river. The knee held. The sky was a blue that felt like an apology and a gift. On the bridge he stopped and leaned against the rail. The water wrote its endless letter to the sea. Behind him, he heard the light pat of paws and the soft scuff of work boots. He didn't turn right away. He didn't have to. Some arrivals you recognize by the way the air says welcome. "Coffee after?" he asked without looking. "Yeah," Miguel said, the word easy the way simple things should be. Riggs gave that same small howl, the one that sounded like a period at the end of a good sentence, and Jack let the sound settle into the day. Because it turned out the revelation wasn't a twist or a secret. It was this: forgiveness returns, sometimes near midnight in the shape of a dog who knows your address, sometimes at noon with a hammer and a list, sometimes at dawn with a river for a choir. And when it returns, it doesn't ask if you deserve it. It asks if you'll carry it on. Jack did. Miguel did. Riggs, with more wisdom than either of them, simply kept showing up where the rope was needed. And Maple Bridge learned a thing that towns forget and remember and forget again. Mercy is not soft. It's strong. It's work. It's a bridge you cross with other people, even when the water below is full of the worst night of your life. If you listened closely on warm evenings, you could hear it in the distance. One clean howl that wasn't a question anymore. It was an answer.